Vonage is one of the pioneers was one of the pioneers in VoIP, voice over IP. If you remember, it was a very old way to communicate, where just you pick up the phone and do a telephone call internationally, and you end up paying like hundreds of dollars literally for that thing. And that got disrupted by Vonage at that point, introducing VoIP, voice over IP, and that just changed the entire industry. But that was almost 20 years ago.
Right.
Over the last 20 years, the company has completely transformed itself now to being one of the world's largest cloud communications platforms. Now, what does that mean? It's a big mouthful. What does that actually mean? Well, we all actually use services like a ride-sharing application, an Uber or a Lyft or something, and we get texts when the driver arrives, or we get a voice call and say, hey, where is the driver? Where is he actually? Is he on the curb or is he not? And if you ever notice, just try to do that next time. You never see the driver's number, or you don't see, the driver doesn't see your number. Well, chances are there's Vonage underneath that's powering those functions through APIs. Similarly, you get your 2FA, your two-factor authentication message when you forget your password, which for me happens quite a bit. So how do you remember that thing? You have your 6-digit code that you enter. That's Vonage underneath that. And I could give a lot of examples, but the thing is that for big companies like the Amazons and the smaller companies like that small flower shop down the road, for them to communicate with their customers, they need to find ways to do that in a very simple way, which customers like: messaging, voice, video, WhatsApp, other types of communications like that. And we have now created one of the world's largest platforms in the world, which provides this for both the small businesses and these big companies to do that at scale. And we have about 100,000 plus enterprise customers and about 1 million plus developers in the community.
So these are developers who are working through your platform to develop applications using what? An API? Joy, how does it work?
Absolutely, and I think for us, for Vonage, we have such a suite of APIs. It's not just one. People think about SMS as you're talking about, but it's not just that. It could be video, it could be voice, two-factor authentication, video, SMS, WhatsApp. So it's really using any sort of API that the customer wants to use to reach their customers, right? Because when we think about it, it's an omni-channel world, right? Particularly after COVID. It pushed so many companies to do business in ways they never did before to survive.
Right.
Some survive, some would say they thrive in doing that. And that hasn't changed. We do studies every year, and none of that behavior changed.
Right.
Things like, curbside pickup where you get an SMS, right? Companies never did it. It's still here today.
Right. We're not going back, right? Exactly.
No, we're not going back. So everything that we experienced, that we had to experience, folks have embraced that, right? So think about it. So when we have a different API for a developer to use, or a unified communications platform, or a contact center platform, that stuff's only growing. So for us, we look at it as the opportunity to have an omni-channel experience, meeting the customer wherever they want to be. And I can tell you from the studies we do, it's very different. It's not a slam dunk, right? It's generational, it's regional, and this is global. Some folks don't want to pick up the phone and call, right? Some folks want to text, some folks want to go through social media. And that's what we bring, that power to any channel you want to reach a customer.
What's in it for the telco operator?
Good question. Telcos are, for the longest time, have invested billions of dollars in their infrastructure. And what they've done over time is monetized it only through charging you and I at $20-30 a month for the service that they offer. Now, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, the kind of content and data that you and I have been accessing has changed. It's no longer just voice and text, which used to be pretty small payloads and not enough bandwidth that's required for it. But as 4G and then finally 5G got introduced, guess what happened? We started to stream Netflix, Prime Video, over the air, right? We started to use gaming over the air. So the amount of bandwidth that got used, you had the TikToks and the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world, which started to really become massive. And people don't realize it. This just happened over the last 5 to 7 years or so when the transition has happened at scale. In that world, the carriers didn't really participate in that revenue increase at all. Most of those other companies increased the revenue. They didn't. They increased their revenue very gradually just by getting a little more subscriber base from somebody else. And that's about it. So they were trying to find a way to monetize that investment. And how do they spend billions every year, how do they monetize it? Well, guess what? The network has got a lot of functions in it already that has not been used. It's sort of latent. In fact, maybe if I speak a little bit of the 3GPP standard language, the 3GPP standards introduced in release 15 and release 16 two network exposure functions. One was called the NEF, the other one was called service exposure function, service center exposure function. They were introduced 7 years ago with the exact idea of how do we expose the function so it can be monetized by the carriers for the end user, for the developers. So there was this thesis, but it never got realized.
It never got exploited.
Right. For the last 7 years. Never got at scale. Why? What was the big reason? Because how do you connect the complex stuff that's in the network, like quality of service, location data, device data, which, by the way, still sits there. I mean, our carrier that we work with today, that you and I subscribe to, knows everything about us. They knows about exactly what our location is. They know what my location is right now. They know the SIM data. They know the device data. They know the service. All of that, that's there. But it hasn't been figured out a way to expose it in such a way that the developers, and by the way, there are no 5G developers, there are no 4G developers, there are no network developers. It's only application developers, which either web or mobile. That's it. So these people really only understand that language. And then there was at the bottom this whole network complexity. How do you connect the dots between the two to make it simple for this to be exposed so that it can be used by them? That's why Ericsson bought Vonage, to make sure we can take advantage of all those network capabilities, which Ericsson today works with some of the largest CSPs in the world, and then allow the simplicity to be exposed to the enterprises and developers worldwide and participate in that revenue creation.
So you're creating an ecosystem for developers to work, to develop applications and services over exploiting those.
Exploiting the network functions.
Very complicated but advanced and useful network functions.
And you know what success would look like? That a developer doesn't even know it was a network function. That they don't even understand that, oh, where did it come from? I just suddenly got location introduced as part of my API over here. Now I can use it without an app. Or I got quality of service or quality on demand included in my video API, which I'm already using to do a telehealth service. And I suddenly got that included as a premium feature. I don't know where it came from, but it's there. It's beautiful. I love it. So they won't even know in some ways where the functions are coming from, but we know, of course, that the only way to provide that is through the network.
But you're essentially opening a door for telcos and service operators, aren't you? That they didn't have open to them before. And this is a way for them to participate in this extraordinary wealth and opportunity and success that has been open to other app developers running over the cloud.
Correct.
So this could be a game changer.
It could really be a game changer. We believe it is. We really think it is, and we are seeing some examples of that already. In fact, here at MWC, you notice that we announced the availability of the first quality on demand API working with Telefonica, Vodafone, and Orange in Spain. So you have 3 big operators which typically wouldn't want to work with each other, come up with a service which is standardized on our platform, which is now, by the way, also being used by companies like Zoom and Blacknut, which is a gaming company, and by us, by Vonage, our own service. So this is not theoretical. This is.
And what lies at the heart of it, just in technology terms, in terms of the how it works part of it? It's a suite of APIs.
Yeah. So think these functions are core to the network. When I said the release 15 and release 16, they contain technical specifications, TS, of specific functions within the components of the network. So it was quality of service, location, device data, SIM swap, geofencing, network slicing. These are different functions that the network has. And these core, but they're not put in a form where they can be captured as an API. So these functions have to be abstracted out and standardized. So if you notice, there was an announcement in MWC about Open Gateway and Camara. So Camara is the API standard, which at least standardizes the network functions being abstracted from the core carrier networks. Now what we are doing is we're actually contributing to Camara and working with it to make it abstracted at the layer where it's an application API. Not a network API anymore, not a standard, but
move
an
it up.
application API.
And that's what people need. They need to
That's what they need.
to work with something which they understand. It's exciting, isn't it? And you've come here to MWC, and APIs are obviously one of the three big stories here. The other ones being multi-cloud and core 5G. But you've been doing this for a while, right? I mean, Joy, tell us how long you've been working on all of this stuff.
Well, at Vonage, we've been doing this for several years, right? As we said, the pivot happened 7, 8
years ago.
Through all these various acquisitions, right? To bring this new functionality, UCaaS, CCaaS, all these APIs. And Vonage really pivoted. I mean, fundamentally changed who we were. And now with Ericsson, now we've been chatting with them for a while when the announcement, when
almost a year and a half or so.
Yes, because we announced the acquisition,
Right,
but it was quite a bit of time before we closed. So we had some mild conversations there, but we really got things going. We said it's only been about 7 months.
Yeah.
Really since the acquisition, even though it was announced previously. So that's really when I think it started to take off like a rocket.
Accelerated
really quite
them.
interestingly, when it was first announced 18 months ago about the thought of acquiring Vonage, there was no question, a lot of skepticism, a lot of scratching heads. Why would you do this, right? We saw the skepticism too. Now we could see it because we knew the power of APIs and what we could do. And I think it's really nice to come. This is our first Mobile World Congress. Actually, I went 20 years ago in Cannes when I was with Orange. But since then, this is Vonage's first time here.
Yeah, I was here last year. I snuck in because we had Leland. I was there just meeting a couple of people with some of the folks in Ericsson. Yeah, but otherwise it was like, nope.
But coming here now, I mean, from 18 months ago to now, the story was, why the heck would they do that? Why would Ericsson want to get in the enterprise space?
Well, it makes you've timed the market perfectly, and I like this expression, the power of APIs, Joy. That's good. You should work in marketing.
Ooh, I wonder.
Guys, it's really exciting. You seem to fit in. You seem to have plugged in really well to the Ericsson system, and I can see it's very complementary, and we're really looking forward to seeing what you do. Maybe we'll meet back next year and hear about all these customer successes that you're going to be having. It's very exciting. Yeah. Thanks for meeting with Silverlinings.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, awesome. Good stuff.